Thinking about moving to St. Louis? Before you pack your bags, there's some things you need to know. As a transplant myself from California, it was an eye-opener and not always as I expected. From culture shocks to everyday quirks, St. Louis is full of surprises that could either make or break your experience. Whether you're excited about the Midwest or just testing the waters, stick around because I'm going to give you 10 warnings before you move to St. Louis. Trust me, you want to hear these before making any decisions. Hi, I'm Ben, your St. Louis real estate ninja. I'm a local investor and agent in the area. I've been investing in St. Louis for a long time. I own over 30 doors in St. Louis. I help people with their real estate needs in St. Louis. So if you have any questions about real estate or living in St. Louis, moving to St. Louis, that's what I'm here for. Feel free to email, text, or call me. I would love to talk to you about your situation, what you're trying to accomplish, and your goals. No pressure, but other than that, let's get to the video. Is it safe? Is St. Louis safe? Is it really that bad? When you research on the internet, you might see some statistics about crime in St. Louis, and I wanted to clarify that for you real fast. The St. Louis region is made up of about 3 million people, and that widespread area is pretty big, but the St. Louis city limits is less than 300,000 people. The statistics of St. Louis are based on that city. Kind of like Baltimore, they only talk about the city limits, not the whole widespread area. The St. Louis city limits has about 280,000 people. So whenever there's crime, the crime rate looks really high because it's only based off of 280,000 people. But if you take the crime statistics over the whole St. Louis region, it's pretty middle grade. Don't get me wrong, there are some hoods in St. Louis, and you definitely got to be aware of those areas and the crime statistics in the area. As a licensed agent, I don't know if I can steer you away from certain areas, but typically the lower prices, the worse the neighborhood. There are some areas of St. Louis where the areas are not really good at all. Usually there's not a lot to do there. There are no Walmarts or Targets. It is a food desert and there's not much going on. And then there's a lot of crime because of that. You want to look at home prices around that medium home price in the area. If you are in that range, you are usually doing pretty good. If you are above that, then you are going to find a good neighborhood, good values, good schools, and so on. I want to take LA for example. So LA has a lot of different cities and a lot of different pockets and towns in the whole county and region. You base the statistics on Burbank, Pasadena, El Rancho Cucamonga, Compton, Watts, Beverly Hills. So it all comes together as a blended crime rate. But in St. Louis, you just have the city, so you do have to dig into it more to see what's actually going on in the whole region and find the best place for you and your family. Usually local St. Louisans talk about St. Louis as the whole region. They talk about the county, St. Charles County, and so on. On the news and online, they just talk about the city limits and the crime rates in those areas. 280,000 people compared to 3 million in the whole region. Of course, this is a big concern when thinking about moving to St. Louis. Overall, I've felt very safe here. I feel like it's a very good quality of life. In the hoods of St. Louis, most likely you're never gonna go there. It's 30, 45 minutes away. There's not much to do or go there for. So usually you're never gonna go through those areas. You might drive past it on the highway, but you're not gonna go there for anything to do or any activities. Most of the middle class, working class people live not anywhere close to those areas, and they have their own subdivisions and neighborhoods that they go through with all the amenities, all the schools, and all the activities to do as a normal middle class family. Weather. Weather is a big question, especially if you're coming from the coast or in a more moderate climate. St. Louis has all four seasons, whether it's hot and humid summers or snow in the winter. There is all types of weather patterns that go on in St. Louis, and it's kind of a joke where, for example, there could be a flash flood warning and a tornado warning that comes in during the day, and then it'll be pretty nice later on that day and it'll clear up. So the weather can be unpredictable and a rapid change of pace in weather patterns, even during the day or during that week. So it's not always the same, and you have to be ready for surprises. St. Louis does get its fair share of rain, but it is not as bad as some of the more wetter states in America. So Hawaii gets the most rain, Washington, Seattle, and most of the rainiest states are in the south, in the Gulf. So Florida, Alabama, Louisiana. It could be an adjustment if you're from California, because when I was growing up in California, there was always a drought. You can't water your lawn, you have to conserve water, everything is dry. So I actually like the rain in the Midwest. We never have to worry about droughts. There's plenty of water. Water is the source of life. So we get a good amount of rain, but it's not as terrible as you might think. When it comes to snow, it will snow a few days a year in St. Louis, on the average about 7 days of snow, but none of the snow is super thick, like 8 inches of snow. That has happened a couple of times since I've been here, but usually it's only like a little bit of powder, and then in 1 or 2 days it's gone. St. Louis does a good job of clearing their roads, putting salt on the roads. So usually if it snows, you're probably boxed in for 24 to 48 hours, and then they plow everything, and then you are good to go from there. Of course, when it's slippery and snowy, you don't want to be driving far, but running to the store, running some errands in your neighborhood, everybody does it, and people know how to drive in the snow. In California, when it rains, no one knows how to drive because they're just not used to it. But we do have a little bit of snow here. It's not as bad, of course, as the north, as Chicago, Minnesota, Buffalo. But overall, it's kind of cool to have a little bit of snow. Kids and families usually like the snow in the area because they can go outside and go sledding, snowball fights, and build snowmans. As far as humidity, it does get pretty humid for about 3 to 4 weeks a year. As a person from California or a more moderate climate, it's something that you definitely have to get used to. But what I will say though, it is not as bad as certain areas in the South. So Houston is the worst. Florida is very humid. Texas can get really bad. And I will say that is not as bad as those states. So if you can bear with it for a couple of weeks a year, the humidity, you're good to go. I also need to warn you that allergy season around April, 2 weeks out of the year, it'll get really, really bad. I have allergies, so it gets really, really bad. My son gets a lot of allergies, and he can't even breathe for a couple of weeks. So it was really bad for many, many years. I have to take the allergy medicines. I've got more immune to it over the years, but what my son does is he does the nasal rinses every day, and that has actually helped a lot in combating those allergies during the allergy season. Since St. Louis does have a lot of trees and greenery and bushes, there can be places with a lot of mosquitoes. Mosquitoes suck, and if you're in your backyard and you have a lot of grass and trees, you can get bit a little bit, so that is a big warning for you. My mom lives in Arizona, where it's a dry desert, so the bug situation is not bad at all for her, but she does have to deal with 110, 15 degree heat in the summer. But in St. Louis, you do have these mosquitoes and bug problems, so you definitely gotta wear your bug spray and your repellent if you want to survive. We are also a very small channel. Any support that you can give us would be amazing. Please like the video or subscribe to the channel if you get value from this. That really keeps me going and trying to give you the best content about St. Louis. You do have to know about St. Louis City and St. Louis County. Two different animals. St. Louis County had broken off with St. Louis City a long time ago, and now they are two different governments, ran different ways, different rules, different taxes, different municipalities. When people say St. Louis from the outside, you're just looking at the city. But most people live in the county. It's a whole different jurisdiction. It feels different than living in the city. There's different schools, demographics, lifestyles. St. Louis County is made up of a lot of little small municipalities. So that's something you need to know. So there are tons of little towns. For example, there's Kirkwood, Webster Groves, Baldwin, Florissant, Clayton. There's all these little different towns, and they all have different rules and different taxes and schools. So you have to be aware of that when you are choosing to live in the county. If you live in the city, it falls under the St. Louis City jurisdiction. This can be very confusing. It can impact cost of living, housing, and all types of different things. Some people will say, don't live in the city, live in the county, and vice versa. There is a difference in living in both areas, so you have to balance those two to see what is the right fit for you. Small town mentality. St. Louis can be referred to as a big town rather than a small city. And that's because things are really spread out. A lot of people that have been here for a long time. So it's not much hustle and bustle. It's more of this small town vibe. If you are coming from a bigger major city, it can feel like a slower pace of life. So that might be an adjustment for you. A lot of people can say that St. Louis is cliquey and there's a bubble. So a lot of people have deep-rooted connections to their neighborhood, and in that neighborhood it could be tight-knit. So you have these circles that you've been in for a long time. So when a transplant comes in and you are new to the area, it can be challenging for newcomers to kind of get in with that clique and that crew. Not that people are not welcoming, but it's like these deep-rooted social circles that have been there for a long time, and they know each other and they know their families for years. So you as a newcomer, it might take a while for you to come in and get with that community. There's this thing in St. Louis where people will ask you, what high school did you go to? And I think it's kind of funny, but what they unconsciously do is try to see where you're from, what your background might be, how your upbringing was, so they can kind of put you in this box and try to understand where you came from. I think it's funny. It's not done with any malice or anything, but it's just what a lot of people do in St. Louis. So that's a warning for you. Be ready. What high school did you go to? With the small town mentality, I would say there's not a lot of like happening clubs and hot spots to go to as far as nightlife and clubs. There are tons of bars, right? Like low-key bars, sports bars, strips where you can kind of hang out and it's more kind of low-key. Don't get me wrong, there are some clubs that you can go to, and I'm not part of that scene, so I really don't know that much about the club scenes here. But overall, it's not the same as LA, San Francisco, Florida, Texas, New York. All those bigger cities tend to have a more vibrant nightlife. In St. Louis, it's not as much. There's some, but once again, in a low-key, chill type of manner. The next warning is personal property tax. So St. Louis has a personal property tax for boats, cars, RVs, those type of things. They'll tax you on those. I never heard of that before, but that's how St. Louis tries to get a little bit more from you in taxes. So every city has taxes, and that's the only way they survive. They don't make any money, they don't make any revenue. All jurisdictions do is tax you. And usually that can be in high property tax, that can be in tolls, that can be in higher income tax. St. Louis and Missouri rank towards the middle as far as income tax and property tax. So another way they get you is personal property tax. So the newer your car, the newer your boat, the higher your personal property tax will be for that year. If you have an older car, it'll be less. So in my experience, that tax is about $500 to $2,000 depending on what type of property that you have. To give you an example, I own a 2020 Chrysler minivan and my wife has a 24 Lexus. We paid about $1,200 in personal property tax last year. St. Louis also has a 1% earnings tax. So if you work in the city, then you will be charged a 1% off of your pay stubs. St. Louis is super spread out. So when people talk about St. Louis, they talk about St. Louis City, St. Louis County, St. Charles, and even on the Illinois side. The Mississippi River is the border of the eastern part of St. Louis, so a lot of people live on the Illinois side. A lot of people live in Belleville, Illinois, Alton, Illinois, Granite City. They might work in St. Louis, have family in St. Louis, and have access to all the amenities in St. Louis. There's also Jefferson County, and a lot of people live in Arnold or Festus. A lot of people go out west to places like O'Fallon, Wentzville. And in North County, a lot of people live in Florissant, Hazelwood, Ferguson. So being so spread out and public transportation not being the best, most likely you need a car to get around because everything could be 20 to 30 minutes out, depending on your commute and where you like to go. In St. Louis, we do have the Metro and the Metro Link, and those are okay getting around the city area, but once you go farther out, it doesn't work too well. Speaking of getting around the roads, St. Louis is a more older area, over 150 years old. So the roads, there are older infrastructure. Some areas, roads are not taken care of as well as other parts. In newer cities, newer areas, like on the West Coast, since they were established a lot later, the roads tend to be better. Also, weather affects that, right? So the more rain, the more heat, the more coldness. Sometimes the roads get beat up a little bit more. Overall, they're maintained okay. Depending on where you're from, the roads might not be as maintained as well as other big cities. Also, other big cities tend to have bigger, wider highways. So 4, 5, 6 lanes. Cars can go through, it's really fast. St. Louis doesn't have quite big turnpikes and highways, and there are a few 4-lane highways, but for the most part they are smaller. Traffic is not as bad in St. Louis as most other big cities, which is a good thing. But overall, the highways are not as big and as wide. But a warning for you is that the St. Louis streets are not as intuitive as they should be. So usually in big cities, you have, First Street, Second Street, Third Street, Fourth Street, and everything is kind of in a square rectangle type of manner. In St. Louis, it's not like that. Gravois goes all the way through St. Louis, and it's kind of in a weird direction. It's funky. A lot of the roads tie into each other and turn into different roads with different names, and some highways all loop together, and it's not just a straight cookie cutter square rectangle type of thing. And give it a couple of months, you'll get used to it, but just be warned that at first you might get a little bit confused. I wanted to give you a heads up about the public school system. So if you are in the city limits, it's the St. Louis Public Schools District. And most people that live in the city will not go to those schools. They will choose a private school option. And that is because the St. Louis Public Schools don't have the best rating. So a lot of kids will choose to go to the private route. A lot of them will go to Catholic schools, Christian schools, and go the private manner so they can live in the city limits. But if you are living in the county, there are a lot of better options. So most of the best school districts in St. Louis are in the county area, St. Charles area, St. Louis County. And I do have a video breaking down the top 10 school districts in St. Louis. Just be warned that in the city of St. Louis, the public school systems are not the greatest. There was even a time where the St. Louis public schools had lost their accreditation, so everybody moved out to the county to be in better schools. Now, St. Louis public schools has gotten their accreditation back, but they are still recovering from that stigma, and most people just choose to go in the county to school their children. And with factors like that, the St. Louis area has a declining population. So the city of St. Louis has a declining population and people are moving out, and they usually get more bang for their buck going west to the county, south to the county. People are moving more to the county because they can get better homes, better schools, and it's safe. So a lot of times you can get a house in that 250 range all the way up to 500 for most parts of St. Louis, and you can have a great quality of life. I've noticed that a lot of people in the city are more young professionals. They like to be in the urban area, a lot more happening going on as far as restaurants, nightlife, activities. It is more bustling in the city. But once you have a family and you are looking to settle down a little bit, that's when usually you move to the county. The next one is sports. St. Louis is a great sports town. There's a lot of great history here and a lot of great fans in the St. Louis area. The biggest major professional team in St. Louis is the St. Louis Cardinals of Major League Baseball. And St. Louis has a rich history of winning championships, one of the best baseball fans in America, very knowledgeable about baseball and the roster and all the moves that are going on in St. Louis. Just be warned that you're going to hear a lot of talk about the Cardinals and sports in St. Louis. If you are interested in baseball and you know a little bit about baseball, it'll be easier for you to get in with people because you're talking about sports and the local sports team. When the Cardinals are doing well, it causes a big buzz in the community. There is a lot of economic growth for people watching games at bars and public events. The games get more sold out. If you can get a little bit of knowledge about the sports in the area, that will do you well in St. Louis. Also, the St. Louis Blues is a National League hockey team. We have great fans over here. People know their hockey a lot. A lot of kids play hockey, and the Blues is a big part of the community here. But one thing I do have to warn you about is NFL football. So the St. Louis Rams were here for many, many years, and they recently left to LA. So now they are the Los Angeles Rams. But I do have to let you know that St. Louis hates the Rams now. The fans feel betrayed. The team was tanking and trying to lose so they can have less money and less attendance. So their excuse can be, yeah, we have to move. And in particular, Stan Kroenke, the owner of the Rams, everybody hates him here because he just wanted to move to LA to make more money. The Rams are in LA now and they are worth more money now. But the fans in St. Louis, I believe, are better diehard fans than in LA. LA is a great place to live, a lot going on there, but they are not as great fans. They're not diehard fans like a St. Louis would be. But in St. Louis, they followed them through all the tough times, all the bad seasons. The attendance was still really good. And for the ownership to say St. Louis is not a football town, that really hurts the people of St. Louis. And that's why St. Louis doesn't like the Rams, and particularly the ownership group. And recently there has been another football league launch called the UFL. It's kind of a merger between the XFL and the United Football League. So they've merged and now there is a new football league. And St. Louis has a professional team called the St. Louis Battlehawks. And in the few years that the league has launched, St. Louis has by far the most attendance out of any team in the league. And that is proof that St. Louis is a football town, a great sports town, and St. Louis comes out to support their sports like crazy. St. Louis football fans now don't like the Rams. They don't cheer for the Rams. What I've noticed now is that most football fans follow the Kansas City Chiefs. So Kansas City is in Missouri. It's on the other side of Missouri. Just like everywhere in America, though, there are a lot of Green Bay Packer fans, a lot of Cowboy fans, Steeler fans. So that's everywhere in the country, but for the most part, there's more Chiefs fans than any other team. And with St. Louis loving sports so much, they recently opened up a new soccer venue for a new professional soccer team. It is called St. Louis City SC. That has caused quite a buzz in the St. Louis area. They're looking to bring a lot of fans down there, economic growth, more activity in the Union Station area to build up that whole area. So soccer is growing big in popularity in the St. Louis area. As far as college sports in the area, University of Missouri is the big game in town. Missouri, also known as Mizzou, is a Division I school. They are in the best division in college football called the SEC. So they are a big time football program, and that also creates a lot of excitement in the area. At the time of this video, Mizzou is ranked in the top 10 in the college football standings. But Mizzou is consistently in the top 25, looking to compete for an SEC championship and a national championship. So in the Midwest, there might be less emphasis on healthy trends. So when you're on the coast, a lot of times you have more organic markets, health food stores, fitness trends. But in the Midwest, there might be not as much as that as you're used to. When I first moved to the Midwest, they were just barely putting recycling trash cans in the alley and taking that trash away. But in California, we've already been doing it for like 15, 20 years. Like, I thought everybody recycled, but St. Louis was a little late to that party. So whenever you go to grocery stores and you're bagging up your groceries, those plastic bags, in Missouri, they don't charge for that. So in California, they charge you 5-10 cents. You know, in the coast, they always charge you 5-10 25 cents if you use a plastic bag. And I'm not saying that people are not conscious of that here. Most people do recycle. It is just not ingrained as deeply as you might expect. As far as eating healthy, the Midwest might not be as well versed overall. Let's take sushi, for example. Most people in California can eat sushi. They know about sushi. They know the health benefits of it. In the Midwest, I would say most people have not even tried sushi before. In the Midwest, they might not know about healthy eating compared to other areas like sushi, like eating vegan, vegetarian. For food in St. Louis, there's a rich history of Italian food, barbecue, St. Louis specialties. But overall, as far as healthy eating, not so much. With that being said, there is a growing food scene here. Asian food is becoming more popular here. Mexican food is becoming more popular over here. Of course, on the coast, we have all that available to us, and we've been eating all that stuff for years, but it's a little slower for change here in St. Louis. So there it is, 10 warnings you need to know before making the move to St. Louis. I hope you got some value out of this. If you could support the channel, please like and subscribe to the video. Also, if you want to talk about St. Louis real estate, that's what I'm here for. Feel free to email, text, or call me, and I'd be happy to talk to you about your situation and your goals. I also made another video here that will help you in your research of St. Louis. I hope it gives you some value as well. Check it out if you can. Other than that, I'll see you on the next one.